I want to give a couple quick notes and disclaimers. In the video you're about to watch, I'm going to talk about how I modified a part on this Mauser, which is a firearm. And if you modify parts on a firearm, it can be dangerous. So what I am warning you is if you don't feel like you have the know-how or handiness or tools to do this kind of thing, then don't. But if you do, this video is not telling you what to do necessarily, but it is telling you what I did. Even though I may say a few times, this is what to do, what I really mean is this is what I did. So, take that as you will. The other thing is, you might ask, why didn't you just buy a new firing pin or buy a new cocking piece? And the reason for that is pretty simple. Any parts you get for a rifle like this are either going to be modern reproductions or well-worn military surplus parts. The danger with both of those is that quality control is not necessarily great. So I might buy a new firing pin, put it in, and then realize that it is just as bad or maybe worse than the firing pin that I had in. So that is why I chose to modify the part that I modified instead of just replacing it. I am going to make one recommendation. If you are going to do this kind of thing, I recommend watching this video all the way through once from beginning to end before you take any individual step of the process. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get into it. A common problem with Mauser rifles is that they won't be able to fire certain surplus ammo, while still being able to fire modern ammo. Many people will look at that and say, oh, you just need to replace the spring. However, I tried that and it still didn't work. So I found another problem, and that was that my firing pin was out of spec. Now this can be a common problem, and I haven't seen any videos about how to solve this problem. So I decided to make one for you, and this is based off of something I read on a forum or a blog, and I'm recording it for a video for you guys. So this is going to be less of a me doing it the process and more of what I did and how you can do it, because YouTube has certain policies about modifying firearms. So I'm just going to tell you what I did, and what you choose to do with that information is up to you. Now, with that out of the way, firing pin spec on a Mauser 98 rifle is supposed to be somewhere between 0.055 inches and 0.065 inches. And mine was at 0.039. So you might be asking, how do I measure that? So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to collect some measurements. And the way that we're going to do this is we are going to let our firing pin down gently so that we don't damage our firearm, and so that we don't damage the firing pin. So I recommend doing this on like a table or something like that, but it needs to have a flat edge, not a rounded edge. I'm going to do it on this 2x4 on my table, just because then you can see it easy. However, I recommend doing this on a more solid object than I am going to do it on. So you want to push down on the striker and then turn the safety to the point that it is off. So normally for disassembly, you want to have your safety in this position right here. However, we are going to have it in the positions that it is ready to fire. So you want to let this down as gently as possible. And the way that I'm going to do it is I'm going to, you need to press this button right here like you would if you were disassembling it. And then you just need to, as gently as you can, let it ride down that rail, because you don't want it to be slamming, you don't want the firing pin to slam in. So now that we have the firing pin protruding, we're going to measure it using some calipers. If you don't have calipers, you might need to do what I did and borrow them from someone else. However, the way that we're going to do this is we're going to use this part right here to take the measurement. So I found that the best way to do this was to put the firing pin right on the base, and if yours isn't, if your firing pin isn't protruding long enough that you clear the surface right there, you might need to have it off to the side like this, but mine is now long enough so I can do it like that, and I will have the screen. So make sure you zero it out, and then we'll extend it, and I am at, measurement I got earlier was 0.59, but it is somewhere between 0.055 and 0.059, kind of depending on how you hold it. So that means that it is now in spec, even though it was not earlier. But that is the first measurement you want to write down. So mine that I originally had was 0.039. You want to make sure to know how much material you actually need to take off. So yeah, that's what you'll do. You'll measure it like that, and then you will write down the number that you get. All right. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to recock that striker and then move the safety over. So what you're going to see me do is I'm going to press down, and then I'm going to rotate the safety so that it's in the normal disassembly position again. Like that. Okay, now it's just like if you were going to disassemble it, it'd be like that. So we are going to now disassemble the bolt. So press the button, ride that down, and unscrew it. Now I use this block of wood right here for disassembly because my Mauser does not have the disc for disassembly, and this way I don't damage my firing pin. So you can press that down, rotate this, get that up. Okay, what I did was I removed the spring, and what we're going to figure out now is we're going to figure out the maximum amount of material that we could take off if we needed to. In here like normal, so basically we're going to reassemble the bolt, but without the spring. Disassembling it without the spring in is kind of a challenge because things are tending to slide where they're not normally don't want to. Okay, now what you're going to do is you're going to put it in its fired position like before, but this time you'll notice that you have to fight this spring right here when you push it all the way forward, and that's what we want to do. Basically what we're doing right now, so in case I did not say this earlier, the surface that actually makes the firing pin depth stop is this surface right here on the cocking piece. This surface right here, the flat surface, hits right here, and that is what actually stops the firing pin from going any deeper. We don't want to have this small surface right here battering the end of the rotation lug, because these pieces might break if that happens again and again and again. You want the firing pin to be stopped right here where there is a lot of surface area that it is contacting. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to figure out the most amount that we could take off if we absolutely needed to. So you're going to take that and you're going to press it all the way in as far as it can go. And basically what this is measuring, if you took off all of the material, it would press that far and it would be hitting this point right here, which is what you don't want to have happen. So then you're going to take the measurement of what the firing pin is at right there. So I'm going to try and come up. It's kind of a three-handed operation, and trying to do it on camera is even harder. So I'm going to move in a weird way, but you will get the point. So the measurement might be slightly different from when I did it off camera because I could hold everything exactly where it is supposed to be. Right now I'm reading about 0.066. However, the number that I got was 0.69, and that is probably just because it's a lot harder to do on the camera, and so I'm getting that off. But basically what you're doing is with one hand, you are pushing the firing pin all the way forward. So first measurement, let the firing pin go forward with the spring still in. The second measurement, let the firing pin go forward with the spring out and push it as far as you can and measure the firing pin depth. So that is the most amount of firing pin depth that you can have before you start contacting where you do not want to contact. Okay, so now we have what the firing pin is currently at, which for me was 0.039. Then we have the maximum we can do, 0.069. However, the spec is 0.055 to 0.056. So this maximum is hopefully not something I will get to. I still wanted to know the maximum, just so that I knew if I made a mistake, when the mistake would start to be dangerous in other areas. Thankfully, I did not go that far. But what that means is that I need to remove anywhere from 0.016 to 0.026 inches. All of these measurements are in inches from this space right here. And now that I have, you can see that. You can tell it's kind of rough. Looks like something made in the Khyber Pass. But hopefully now my Mauser will work better than it was before. Okay, now let's talk about how I removed that material. I started with these two files, and because that part was so hard, it was hard steel, it was just taking too long. So I decided to use electric tools, and normally I wouldn't do that for something like this, but it was going to take forever if I kept on doing it by hand. So I got my rotary tool out, and I did use some others, but I mainly used 4 bits. This is just a grinding bit I used, and this was effective for moving a lot of material quickly. So at the beginning of the process, I would use this bit. And then as things got to get a little bit more specific, I switched to these two. These are just 2 diamond bits I've used for like glass engraving or fine engraving in the past. And they do take a little bit more time than that grinding wheel, but they are a lot more specific too, and a little bit more forgiving if you make a mistake. The point where I really needed this one right here with the point was getting into this edge right there. And you can tell that it is still a little bit uneven, but it is even enough for my work. But getting back into that corner, I really needed the diamond-shaped bit that was on here. And then I also used this right here. This is like a sandpaper wheel that you can get for your rotary tool. And the big thing that this gave me was the ability to even it out all the way around. And then, of course, after that, I did use the files just to kind of square off some rough edges, and then I used some sandpaper to make it so it didn't have any sharp edges. So that is the process that I followed to get my Mauser 98 firing pin into spec. Obviously, your process may be a little bit different. You might measure it and then realize that your firing pin depth is not actually the problem. And if that is the issue that you find, I would recommend something like this, a Wolf Striker spring, and maybe that will fix your issue. I mean, maybe it won't as well, I'm not quite sure. I don't, of course, know whatever your problem with your rifle is, but that could be one of the two problems. I'll be doing a video down the road about the major problems that can happen that cause Mausers to not fire. However, I think the striker spring not being strong enough and the firing pin not being long enough are two good places to start. So I'm not going to upload this video until I can get out to the range and then do some shooting so I can test if this actually worked. Obviously, I don't want to upload this video telling you what to do if it didn't actually work. After doing this modification, I took my Mauser out to the range, and sadly this was the same range strip where I was having those problems with my audio, so I'm just going to talk over it. The first ammo that I fired was the Czech ammo, and the Czech ammo cycled, I think, flawlessly. I may have had one or two very, very light hang fires, but before that I was having about 40% of those rounds only fire on the second primer hit. So taking it from that to being able to fire every round maybe with a slight hang fire that I couldn't even distinguish is really good. I also fired the Bulgarian ammo, and if you remember how that Bulgarian ammo did, about half of those rounds didn't fire at all, and all of the ones that did either had severe hang fires or fired on the second primer hit. Now I had all of them fire on the first primer hit and just a few hang fires. This one simple modification has been a vast improvement to the ammo that I can fire, and it will definitely help out my wallet because I can fire cheaper ammo. I hope this video was able to help you out, but I took a rotary tool to the back of my cocking piece and I lived on.
Which proves it's hard to get the best of a man named John. Hey, John. Hey, John.